So welcome to this webinar presented by the IET's Anglian Coastal Local Network, which represents members in Norfolk and Suffolk. Welcome also to folks from other parts of the UK and indeed globally. I'm delighted to welcome you all. I'm Kevin Foster and I'm chairman of the Anglian Coastal Local Network, and I'll be your host for this evening's webinar. Now, we'll leave questions until the end of the presentation, so please, if you think of a question, use the Q&A panel in Zoom. I'm delighted to introduce our speaker, Professor Nigel Linge. Nigel is a professor of telecommunications at the University of Salford and director of the Computer Science, Networking and Mathematics Directorate within the School of Science, Engineering and Environment. He's an electronic engineer by profession who specializes in data communication networks and their applications. His research, which has a strong industry involvement, covers 5G mobile, location and context-based services, communication protocols, the delivery of multimedia services, network design and architectures. He chairs the editorial board of the Journal of the Institute of Telecommunications Professionals, and in addition to writing many academic research papers, Nigel has co-authored a couple of books. First one is 30 Years of Mobile Phones in the UK, and the second is The British Phone Box. Nigel also takes a keen interest in telecommunications heritage and maintains an active outreach portfolio, which includes the delivery of public talks and appearances in the media, such as the BBC's time shift programme, Dial B for Britain. Nigel is a chartered engineer and a chartered IT professional, a fellow of the Institution of Engineering and Technology, British Computer Society, and the Institute of Telecommunications Professionals. Now, today, Nigel will talk about the rise of the camera phone. So, Nigel, it's over to you.
Thank you, Kevin, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for the invitation to speak on this subject of the rise of the camera phone. And if you think about all of the features that have been added to the mobile phone over its still relatively short history, it is perhaps the camera that has had the greatest impact of all. And it's been said, particularly attributed to Chase Jarvis, a photographer, who said, "The best camera is the one that's with you." And today, for an awful lot of people, that camera is more likely than not to be the one on your mobile phone. In fact, in 2003, camera phones outsold digital still cameras worldwide for the first time ever. And as Neil Morstan from Strategy and Analytics said, 25 million camera phones were shipped worldwide, compared with just 20 million digital still cameras in the first half of 2003. It's a milestone event because it's just the first step towards the industry goal of getting a camera phone in every pocket. Now, this slide is slightly different to what I've just said, because this is looking at the growth and decline. This is the turquoisey, bluish colored chart here of digital cameras versus the rise, not of the camera phone, of the smartphone. So you have to be slightly careful how it's presented. But what it does show, if you look at the red line, as the smartphone, and of course that came later in the evolution of the mobile phone, as it's grown, what you see is around about 2013-ish, it crosses over with the decline in the camera itself, the digital camera. So what you're seeing is a rise in the sales of cameras and digital cameras, and then in the last few years, the last 5 years or so, possibly 10 at the most, you're seeing quite a dramatic drop in sales of cameras combined with a massive growth in the smartphone. So for an awful lot of people, the only camera they've used is on a mobile phone. And people are now often ditching that sort of point and shoot camera for their smartphone. Obviously at the high end with the digital DSLR and the interchangeable lenses, that still reigns supreme. But as a volume, it's going to be a relatively small percentage. This advert for the Panasonic Lumix GF3 camera is important, and it's 2011. Because if you look at the marketing blurb that goes with this camera, it says here, Panasonic today announces its latest compact camera, the mirror-free Panasonic Lumix DMC GF3 is the company's smallest and lightest digital interchangeable lens camera with a built-in flash with its body size, and here's the key phrase, comparable to that of a smartphone. And this is regarded as the first time you see a camera manufacturer challenging that their device is the size of a smartphone. In other words, the recognition that the smartphone has become a major competitor to the traditional camera manufacturers. So what was the first camera phone? Well, some people say it was the VP 210, launched in 1999. It could take up to 20 photographs. They could be shared by email, but this ran on the Japanese personal handy phone PHS network, which was DECT, not cellular. So technically, this isn't a cellular mobile phone at all. Was it the Samsung V200? Well, this one could take pictures, but it wasn't fully integrated. You had to download the pictures via a cable to your PC. Maybe it was the Orange video phone shown here. Pioneering piece of technology, huge piece of technology physically, very much optimized for video transmission using high-speed circuit switched data service on the 2G network. But that was really optimized for video. So what was the first true cellular camera phone? Well, it's recognized it was this, the Sharp JSH04. And the story of this phone is that it began in Sharp's research laboratories in Japan, where the phone was developed. And Sharp took it to Docomo, and Docomo were Japan's #1 mobile operator, and they turned it down flat. So too did Japan's second mobile operator, AU. So not deterred, the engineers at Sharp went along to Japan's third and smallest mobile operator, JPhone, and their reaction was quite different. They welcomed the idea, but the engineers welcomed the idea, but the marketing department really didn't see a lot of value in integrating a low resolution VGA camera with a phone that also had a relatively low resolution screen. So there was a classic compromise drawn up where JPhone and Sharp agreed that they would manufacture 10,000 JSH04s. However, only 2,000 of those would have the camera fitted, and the other 8,000 wouldn't. Well, the JSH04 camera variant sold out within 6 weeks, whilst the 8,000 that didn't include the camera languished on the shelves. So the camera phone really demonstrated, the JSH04 truly demonstrated the popularity of putting a camera on a phone. It was fully integrated with the ShareMail picture messaging service and a properly designed user interface. It was a 0.11 megapixel camera, more about megapixels later. So this phone, of which there were only 2,000 made, is now regarded as definitively the world's first mobile camera phone. And we also have to remember that the camera phone, if you're going to start sharing pictures, needs a network with data capability. So the evolution of the camera phone naturally follows the evolution in the network infrastructure. And a key development, of course, of the 2G network was the launch of GPRS. And as this slide illustrates, the GPRS network basically extended 2G with a data handling portion. So shown here at the bottom, the clouds at the bottom in red, was effectively a data network. So from your mobile handset, the telephone calls would go over the traditional GSM network, the voice telephony network indicated by the clouds at the top, the blue clouds, and onwards to the PSTN networks. However, any data would go via the new data network with an external connection to the public internet, this always on data service. So you've got a much higher data rate, not compared to today's phones, but of the day. And it was BT Cellnet that actually launched the world's first GPRS service back in June 2000. And that is, always got to remember, is a key enabler to the evolution of the camera phone. The first in the UK is this Sony Ericsson T68i, but as you can see from the photograph, the camera is not integrated, it's a separate attachment. But what was important here is that this phone worked on T-Mobile's picture messaging service. And this came in June 2002. Nokia and Motorola launched their first camera phones. Nokia's was the 7650 in 2001. And it also was integrated with the multimedia messaging service. Motorola, slightly behind in date-wise, in 2003, brought out the V300 with its 0.3 megapixel camera, and also integrated with the multimedia messaging service. And the Motorola V300 was the classic flip phone shown here, obviously folded over. But you can see the camera facing you in this case, but when the phone is open, of course, the camera faces away. The GX10, Sharp's GX10, was Sharp's first European camera phone. A 0.11 megapixel camera. It had a 2x digital zoom, more about digital zooms later. This phone won the best handset in the 3 GSM World Congress in 2003 and is actually known as the David Beckham phone because David Beckham was employed as part of the marketing campaign to really promote this phone. The GX30 from Sharp was the first 1 megapixel camera phone. So they're pushing the resolution of their phones, increasing the megapixel count. And just to give you some context, other manufacturers of the time, absolutely significant and dominant here, of course, is BlackBerry. And they were quite late to the camera phone market. And primarily, if you think about BlackBerry, their focus was the business customer. And the philosophy for BlackBerry was really that the camera wasn't aimed at the business customer. It was aimed at the general public. So it was actually, as you can see here, some years before BlackBerry brought out their first camera phone. Didn't really fit with the brand and the marketing that BlackBerry had set out for themselves. The Z1010 is important, 2003. This is regarded as the first mobile phone with a front-facing camera. So the camera here, you can see it on the right-hand side with the phone open. You've got there, it says little video call next to it. That's a front-facing camera. We would today regard that as a selfie camera. The rear-facing camera, you can see in the center where the phone is folded in half. And that's the camera that would be taking pictures, obviously, as per all of the others. But this one, the Sony Ericsson Z1010, is regarded as the first with a front-facing camera. And why we would want a front-facing camera is for video calls. And what really enabled that was, of course, the launch of 3G, 3rd of March 2003, by 3 in the UK. And they brought out, when they launched 3G, these three launch handsets, the NEC E606, the Motorola A830, and the NEC E808, all with front-facing cameras as well as rear-facing, but front-facing cameras because they believed the 3G would be all about video calls. Now, the middle of the phones there, the A830, is a little bit different because technically the camera was an add-on unit. But rather interestingly, the camera was actually on a rotating cylinder, and you could have, it was one camera, but you could either rotate it to face towards you for the video calls, or you could rotate it to face away from you, and it would act as a camera. So 3G is seen as, again, an important driver for the development of the camera phone, in particular front-facing cameras, because it's for video calls. But that front-facing camera today, we would, as I said earlier, refer to that as a selfie camera. And the word selfie is quite interesting how that has evolved. But in 2013, Oxford dictionaries regarded selfie as the word of the year because their research suggested that the frequency of the use of the word selfie in the English language had increased by a staggering 17,000% in the last year. However, if you go back through the archives, in 1839, Robert Cornelius is regarded as an American pioneer of photography. He's regarded as the person who created the first self-portrait or selfie of himself. And you can see the image there, which is in the US Library of Congress. However, in amongst all the conversations about selfie, astronaut Buzz Aldrin went public to remind everybody that in 1966, whilst taking part in his first space flight, he took a selfie of himself, obviously high above planet Earth. And that was on his Gemini 12 mission. The modern selfie really owes its origins to Japan and the Japanese culture of sharing pictures. The kawaii culture became very popular in the 1990s, where they had these print booths where you could create little pictures and share on sort of like sticker albums with other people. And did you know that there is a National Selfie Day? Well, there is. It's the 21st of June. So the 21st of June is National Selfie Day. It's also the longest day, of course. But what are the motivations for people taking selfies? Well, various researchers suggested that these are the drivers. People, let's face it, attention seeking, mood changing, just makes you feel better when you've taken a picture and shared it. Perhaps there's an element of self-confidence involved here. Inevitably, there's social competition, often by saying, look where I am and you aren't here. Subject conformity, well, if everyone else is doing it, I'm going to do it. And of course, creating memories and trophies of where you've been, like we do with all photography. In mid-2019, Google declared that Android devices took 93 million selfies every day. That's obviously a global figure. Mobile phone manufacturer Honor, they said that their research, an average European takes 597 selfies per year, with Spain actually topping their league table at 728 per person. There's no question of it. We have a selfie culture here, thanks to the mobile phone. But have you ever heard of the kilfie? this isn't as pleasant, of course. It's really people who die as a consequence of trying to take a selfie. In 1999, the Journal of Family Medicine and Primary Care in India found that 259 people worldwide died in 137 selfie-related accidents between 2011 and 2017, compared to, in the same time period, just 50 people who'd been killed by sharks, thereby proving that taking a selfie is more dangerous than swimming with sharks. In 2020, custom phone case manufacturer Case24.com, in their survey, found that 41% of mobile phone users admitted that they risked personal safety in pursuit of a selfie. So if you're going to take a selfie, do take care. It is a dangerous thing. Let's talk a little bit more then about this camera and what's in this camera phone. So what are the constituent parts of a camera and a camera phone? Well, cameras, whatever their shape or form, are actually all about capturing light. That's what it's about. So you start with a lens. Then on a camera phone, we have an array of micro lenses which focus light onto a Bayer filter, and from that onto the light sensitive electronics, the photosites, the sensor array that actually converts that light into an electrical signal. And of course, it's the size of that sensor array, and in particular, how many photosites, that determines the resolution. And we refer to that as picture elements or pixels. And of course, this becomes a measure then of the size or the resolution of the image that your phone can capture. And we'll have a look at some typical sizes, but what we're talking about here are pixels or photosites down to about 1.2 micrometers in size. And this will determine the picture resolution. And we'll have a look in more detail about the quality of pictures as we go through the presentation. So you've got these elements. You've got the lens, which is the bit you see on the outside of the camera. You've then got the micro lenses on top of the Bayer filter, on top of the light sensitive electronics or the photosites. And obviously, we saw there with the Sharp GX30 how they were pushing the resolution of the camera phone up to 1 megapixel. And there's been a race to increase the megapixel of the camera over those various years. And you can see here plotted from 2000 up to 2020 how the number of megapixels on the camera in the camera phone has grown and grown. And it's almost gone in steps. But if we just look at the Nokia N90, 2 megapixels, so we just doubled it from the GX30. Carl Zeiss lens, that's the optics on the lens, that's the external bit of the lens that you can see. It actually folds in a curious way, this phone, as you can see, to create almost like a camcorder type hand feeling to it. So this was in 2005. We've gone up to a 2 megapixel camera. The Nokia N95, so important a phone. The N95 2006, really this was did everything, this phone. It was the one that people wanted. And this was a 5 megapixel camera, autofocus, LED flash, and of course it has the front facing camera as well. Just so much more in addition. It was the pinnacle really of smartphone development before Apple came along in January 2007 and suggested to the world that maybe the form factor and design of the smartphone needs to be rethought. This phone, by the way, was far superior on pretty well every metric compared to the launched iPhone. Just goes to show how it's not always technical specs that wins the day. Samsung I8510 pushes us up to 8 megapixels now, you can start to see how the camera, in this case, still a slide format, very much a phone or type form factor. The Sony Ericsson CyberShot, 16 megapixels launched into this camera phone. The Nokia 808, 41 megapixels. Carl Zeiss optics again, digital zoom. This was their last Symbian phone. Best new mobile handset device or tablet World Congress 2012. And then we really accelerate away. But equally, the phones get a little bit less interesting because they are now very much the slab of the smartphone that we now see everywhere. 48 megapixels, the Honor View 20 came out in 2018 with a 25 megapixel selfie camera. This was capable of also recording video in 4K ultra high definition. And then just carrying on, these two phones launched pretty well. I mean, it's very hard when I did some research to try and work out which one of these two was first. There's such conflicting data with regard to the dates. I've put them on the same slide. I can't really tell truly with confidence which was first. The Realme XT or indeed the Xiaomi phone, both here at 64 megapixels camera. And you'll also notice from this image, not one lens anymore. We're at multiple cameras on the phone. And we'll explain why that is later. And finally, we get up to 108 megapixels on a camera phone. And people often say, well, why do we need all these megapixels in a tiny camera with a tiny lens on a mobile phone? The selfie camera on here is a 32 megapixel. So remember that those megapixels are really telling us all about the resolution. But as this graph shows of the megapixels growth, what we also have to remember, as I've indicated before with GPRS and 3G, we've got a network evolution going off behind the scenes as well as we go from 3G to 4G to 5G. And that's important because if you're capturing an image with huge amounts of data in that image because it's high resolution, you need a high data rate on the network in order to share what are becoming very large image files. So the growth in megapixels is definitely connected to the evolution of the network. So let's just go back then to our camera. We've got the light, we've got the optics, we've got the Bayer filter, we've got the photo sites. And you know, I don't have the latest phone, as you can see. My phone at the moment is an iPhone 6S. It works for me. It does everything I need to do at the moment. The camera on that, the actual photo site, the sensor, the image sensor, measures 4.8 millimeters by 3.6 millimeters. And it's known as a 1/3 inch size. And that's just a terminology that's evolved from the camera industry. The mobile phone with the largest image sensor, I believe, is still the Huawei P40 Pro Plus, which has got an 11 millimeter by 8 millimeter sensor in it. And let's just compare that with a full frame 35 millimeter DSLR. You've got in a DSLR camera 36 by 24 millimeter sensor. Notice how much bigger, therefore, that sensor is on a top of the range DSLR camera compared to a rapidly aging and getting out of date iPhone 6S. But even top of the range in Huawei, the sensor site is still small in compared to those digital cameras. Why does that matter? Well, if you take the iPhone 6S compared to the DSLR, then you're talking about, on my phone, a pixel size of 1.2 micrometers compared to 9.1 on a DSLR. And why that matters is because if you keep miniaturizing these pixels down, what effectively happens is you're starting to subject the image to electronic noise, just the dimensions of the electronics. Equally, larger pixels will capture more light. Excuse me. So the larger sensor array is going to be much better in low light conditions. So what some smartphones now do is they combine the pixels into what are called superpixels, which creates a larger effective size. You lose resolution because you're now using more pixels for the same area of image, or representing one pixel's now made up of several of the smaller ones. So you've lost the resolution, but what you have done is improve the low light performance. Because remember, photography is about capturing light. So if your sensors, your photosites are small, they're going to capture less and less of that light. The larger you can make the photosite, the greater the light it will capture, the better it will perform in low light conditions. So your smartphone's got some challenges, some engineering, technical challenges, just because of the physical dimensions of the electronics and the optics and so on. The leading lens manufacturers, based on 2009 statistics, then you've got Sony, Samsung lead the way with OmniVision in third place. So the sensors that are used in your smartphone, most of them are coming from Sony or Samsung. So if you look at the Samsung ISOCELL GW1 sensor, then what you've actually got here, it's typically, let's look at one of these sensors, 7.4 mils by 5.58, 64 megapixel sensor. You've got the micro lens and the color filter. And then if you're talking about the arrangement, depending on where you put the photodiode, then you've got two options. You can either put the interconnections and then the photodiode, or as you can see on the right, the photodiode and then the interconnections. So the arrangement of the electronics in terms of the setting up of the sensor is also very, very important. And what has also happened here is, again, if you look at the image at the bottom left now, you've got two photosites side by side here. And what the problem you've got is that light entering through one micro lens and one color filter could, within the rest of the actual semiconductor, migrate onto the photodiode of the adjacent photosite. And so you get this, the photons can actually come through a particular micro lens, but then hit a photodiode under the adjacent micro lens. So what Samsung have done with the ISOCELL is actually put a vertical barrier, as you can see now on the right-hand picture, so that any photon coming through a micro lens will hit the photodiode under that micro lens and not in any way drift off into the adjacent photodiode. And you've got to remember the dimensions of the geometries here that we're dealing with are really, really small geometries. But are megapixels really that important? Well, I do recommend, if you want to read a bit more about smartphones and how to get the best out of them as a photographer, do look at the Smartphone Photographer website. And they quoted here as they said, if you ask people what makes a phone camera great, the majority of them will probably say the number of pixels it has. But is that really the whole story? Photography is about capturing light. So the sensor size matters, but the more pixels you cram in, as I've just shown, the photosites are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and you're compromising the low light performance of that camera. So would it not be better to have fewer megapixels and you'd have a better, on the same size sensor, and have bigger pixels and get better low light condition? So pixel size can affect the quality of the image, particularly in low light conditions. The lens, obviously, the better the quality, the optics that you've got, but again, look at the dimensions of your phone. You've got a very small geometry there of the lens, but the better the quality of that lens, that will also improve. The aperture. Obviously, the wider the aperture, the more light you can receive, but of course you then sacrifice the depth of field and the focus depth of field. And remember that the lens, the micro lens, the Bayer filter, the sensor matrix, that just converts light to electricity. What you then have, and often the skill in the mobile phone really comes in the software that then processes those signals in an image signal processor that then can make the image even better through digital signal processing. So actually, the quality of the image signal processor in your smartphone can also be a big influence on the quality of the image that you're able to capture. Let's talk about zooming. And we all know about a standard camera and how by altering the length of the lens, the focal length of the lens, we're able to zoom in and zoom out of an object. Optical zoom. Well, that's all well and good on a camera like this, but how on earth could we replicate that on a smartphone? Well, the Nokia N93 of April 2006 actually provided an optical zoom. And what you can see here, it's again one of these cleverly folding cameras. The camera, the center photograph here, you can see the camera and there is an optical zoom capability on that camera. 3 times optical zoom, 3.15 megapixel camera, Carl Zeiss optics. And also there's a selfie camera as well. But look at how big it has to be in order to accommodate that physical motion of the lens. So the Galaxy S4 Zoom took it to another extreme, and you can see just how far that lens is protruding out of the smartphone. 10 times optical zoom, absolutely fantastic. But we're kind of losing the convenience now of the smartphone just to accommodate the lens and the zoom capability. So they have tried to develop mobile phones along the lines of optical zoom, but you can see there are some real practical limitations in what can be achieved. Today, the way you can do it most efficiently is to buy one of these clip-on lenses, which allows you to provide an external zoom lens capability. And you can see there, we can go up with the Mactrem camera lens kit, which gives you a 20 times telephoto lens, a zoom capability. So adding extra lens, these are really popular products to give you that optical zoom capability. But again, you've lost some of the convenience. You're going to have to carry these lenses with you. And obviously, they are clip-on add-ons to your smartphone. But modern smartphones will, in their marketing, say to you, it's got optical zoom. But if you look at something like the Realme XT here, where's the optical zoom? There's no physical movement of the lens. It's not moving. It's not like the other two I've shown you. It's a slight con, actually, because what they're actually doing is using these different cameras. You can see one is a ultra wide angle lens, one's the main camera, one's designed for portraits, one's for macro. And what the image processor does is it's looking at effectively the best lens that's giving you, when you zoom, it's effectively moving across these lenses. So it's not actually optical zoom at all. Every lens is a fixed focal length. What's actually happening is that as you zoom, it's switching across these different lenses and the sensors behind those lenses to give you the effect of zoom. But there is actually, not in the sense of the zoom lens on the camera, any optical zoom going on here. The same again here. We've got the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G, multiple cameras, essentially giving you different resolutions, different focal lengths on the lenses, allowing you to create the illusion of an optical zoom capability. And the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G is interesting for the IET audience, because I'm sure you all read Engineering and Technology magazine of May 2020, when they had the teardown of this phone. It's online as well if you've thrown your copy away. This is the actual inside of the camera, and that's the sorry, not inside of the camera, inside of the phone. And what I've circled in red are the camera components there. So do have a read of the teardown that was published by the IET in ENT magazine back in May last year. What about digital zoom? That's far more common on a smartphone. What on earth do we mean by digital zoom? Well, again, that's an element of trickery and image processing. Let's take this to represent a smartphone sensor. Let's pretend it's 12 megapixels in total. What on earth would we mean by a zoom in digital terms? Well, let's imagine that this is the light gray is the complete image that we can see, and we want to zoom in to the dark gray area. That represents, again, just symbolically, 1.5 megapixels out of the 12 that I've got available on this array. So those are the pixels I'm interested in, and I want to create a zoom effect. How do we do that? Well, what we actually do in digital zoom is take the image information in that dark rectangle there, those 1.5 megapixels, and actually expand the image information outwards to fill the whole area of the sensor array. So what you're doing is taking 1.5 megapixels and that image information and spreading it over the full area of the sensor. But of course, when you do that, you're going to lose resolution. So with digital zoom, there comes a point where the image just becomes too fuzzy because you've taken these pixels and expanded them out simply too far. However, if you have a lot of megapixels originally, the zoom capability is that much greater. So actually, if you've got a 108 megapixel camera, your digital zoom capability is seriously improved because you've got far more megapixels to work to. So actually, there is an argument that says the more megapixels does give you a better digital zoom capability. And we've all got shaky hands of one form or another. How on earth do we get nice, still, crisp images? Well, you can use digital. Sometimes it's called electronic. Sometimes it's called artificial image stabilization. This is software. You've got on your mobile phone accelerometers that can detect very small movements. So the software observes the output from those accelerometers, knows that your phone is moving, and what it does is it looks for a reference point in the image and then effectively tracks that to make sure that reference point in the image stays on the same part of the sensor. So it ultimately results in the viewable image being cropped, but you're actually stabilizing the image by simply moving it around the sensor array so that you can try and create effectively a still image. But the consequences of that is you will crop ultimately the maximum viewable image you can see. So it's much better to not play around with digital techniques, but to do it optically and actually use the output from those accelerometers in your camera to microscopically move the lens in your camera phone. And you actually have small electromagnets surrounding the lens. And as it detects your camera is moving, it's adjusting the lens accordingly. And on the right-hand side, you can see the bulk of the unit that provides this optical image stabilization. That the lens is now on effectively gimbals, which allows it to move ever so slightly to make sure that the image remains stable. Optical image stabilization tends to be reserved for the higher end smartphones. And now, as provided on the Apple iPhone 12 Pro Max, we've got sensor shift image stabilization. You keep the lens fixed, and you now microscopically move the image sensor behind that lens based on the outputs from the accelerometers on your smartphone. So you're actually moving the actual sensor array under the lens to make sure that it keeps a nice stable image. And we talk about the image processing pipeline. We start with the camera lens, the micro lens, the Bayer filter, the CMOS sensor array. That produces electrical output, which has to be converted to digital. So we've now got the raw data going into our image signal processor. And that's where it really does create the RGB image. It does the noise reduction. It sorts out the exposure. It sorts out any sharpening of the image. All of the digital stabilization, when it's used, is done there. Filters and special effects, the geotagging and all of the metadata that goes on your photographs. So when you take a picture with a smartphone, you are recording the time, the location of when it was taken, the settings of the camera are all recorded. There's a huge amount of metadata with every picture you take on the smartphone, all of which is conveniently transferred when you share it, of course. So do bear that one in mind. And of course, increasingly, we're talking about artificial intelligence processing of the image. So when you talk about the camera phone and you talk about the quality of the camera, you really do need to think about this image processing pipeline. All of these elements, in one way or another, impact the quality of the image that you actually take. So it's not just about megapixels, it's not just about the lens, it's about the whole pipeline that determines the ultimate quality of what you're capturing. So that's the technical bit. What's it done to us and society? How has it impacted us? Why is it, all of these developments wouldn't be driven if there wasn't a great societal impetus for improving the camera. Looking at data up to 2017, the number of photos taken worldwide, and what you're seeing there is that 85% in 2017 were taken by smartphones, with digital cameras only coming in at 10% and tablets at 4.7. So again, the comment I made right at the start, for some people, the only pictures they've ever taken are with their smartphones, never with a camera. And they certainly, the younger generation, have never sent their film off to Boots and waited 2 weeks for the prints to come back. Citizen journalism. Well, one of the images that I think really illustrates this great was taken in 2009 on the left. Janice Combs there. The plane that ditched in the River Hudson in America, and he was on the ferry and he tweeted this picture out. There's a plane in the Hudson. I'm on the ferry going to pick up the people. How else? News media couldn't suddenly get there. Who else could do it? You had to be on the scene. You were there at the time. You took that picture. The best camera is the one with you. These sort of images, you are on the scene. We are on the scene all the time. And the camera phone is there with us, capturing these events. Glenn Mulcahy said, this is a guy who's the head of innovation for the Irish broadcaster RTE, by 2020, when 5G goes mainstream, mobile journalism will dominate news. You're seeing this all the time now, people providing mobile phone coverage and footage into the national broadcasters. Mojo Fest is the world's longest running smartphone content creators festival. The BBC have a portable news gathering app, which is obviously designed and optimized for use on smartphones, as is Degero's Live Plus application. So there are mobile phone apps being used by serious journalists, as well as us, the general public, who happen to be at the right place at the right time. And of course, being at the right place at the right time, protests, social unrest, these things are now instantly captured and shared around the world because of the smartphone and the camera phone. Celebrities are obviously in on the game, and this picture taken, I think it was at the Oscars in 2014, broke Twitter. Ellen DeGeneres there with this selfie was claimed to have broken Twitter with the maximum number of shares. I think it has now been beaten, but this was really quite a thing at the time. The image becomes the news story. Films, believe it or not, in 2008, an entire feature film called Sugar Man was filmed on a Sony Ericsson W900i, and that only had a 2 megapixel camera. It was the first full-length film shot entirely on a cell phone. I've not seen it, by the way. I have read a synopsis, and it's not really my cup of tea, so I'm not planning to watch it, and I'm not recommending you watch it. But it is interesting to know that it was created completely on a mobile phone, and that was back in 2008. The smartphone has entered art. In 2010, Pixels at an exhibition was showcased. It was the first iPhoneography exhibit of 200 images shot and processed solely on an iPhone. Your images could only be included in the gallery if they were taken on an iPhone. And Mobile Photography Awards is the world's longest running international competition for mobile photography and art. So now there's no cameras in here. This is all iPhone stuff. So the smartphone is now regarded by the art world as a legitimate contributor. Its images and photography is contributing. What about health applications? Well, medical consultations, because of the camera and video communications, of course, allows you in your hand to have a consultation with a doctor, medical practitioner. This interesting work being done in developing countries, retinal eye testing. Actually, with a small attachment on the smartphone camera, they're able to carry out very important and life-saving eye tests, which has been proven to be a massive a benefit to improving eye health in developing countries. To actually take along a full optician's setup would be impractical, but a smartphone and an attachment, what results are being obtained. There are apps seriously here used to take photographs and diagnose skin cancers. So actually scanning and taking pictures of a person and being able to diagnose what that condition might be. And of course, in this COVID lockdown, track and trace, the QR code, which is on buildings as part of the NHS app, track and trace app, relies on the camera in the smartphone being able to take pictures of that QR code to locate you and obviously register you were there just in case there's a COVID alert on that location later. Apps and more apps. Well, your phone can be used as a document scanner. Most mobile phones come with that capability already built in. It's often hidden, you're not aware it's there, but it is there. You can actually take a scan of a document now using the camera on your smartphone. The top right there, I like this one, an app which will read wine labels and tell you all about it. It's not just wine, it'll do whiskey and all the rest of it, of course. You point it, as you see here, take a picture of the wine label, and you've got your portable sommelier there telling you exactly about that wine, the tasting notes, and so on. Because after all, if you read the label, it very rarely tells you anything in my experience. The way they describe flavors means absolutely nothing to me, but maybe this will give you a better indicator. And of course, you can do the same with plants. There's apps there which take a photograph of a plant and it will tell you what that plant is. And really useful traveling overseas, looking at road signs, looking at signs in general, take a picture, it translates it into the language, from the language into English, or any language that you want it translated into, of course. But again, classic use of the camera in the phone. All of these apps are dependent on the camera having, the phone having a camera. And social media, well, the numbers you see coming out of social media are just astronomical. You wonder whether there's how to believe these numbers really. But I have taken it from the link that you can see at the bottom there. And it was saying that Instagram, you're getting something like 95 million photographs uploaded daily. That's 40 billion photographs since its creation, all of 10 years ago. Facebook, 300 million photographs uploaded every day. And the really staggering one, YouTube, 300 hours of video uploaded every single minute, and 5 billion of video views being viewed each day. And the vast majority of those videos being uploaded to YouTube are coming out of smartphones. So massive impact on social media. And in fact, some research that was done by MG Advertising reported that social media content was paired, when it was paired with an image, attracted 94% more views than without a visual. So if you want to post something on Facebook, on Twitter, whatever, if you want to increase the impact of that, put an image on it. And the research has shown that if you can add an image, you get more response, you get more attention. But I thought this piece of research was also interesting and counter to that. This was carried out by a lady called Emma Templeton, published in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology. And her research concluded the camera is a distraction. Remember, the camera sits between your eyes and the world. You are seeing the world through that camera. You're not actually looking at the world direct. You're looking at it through the optics and the screen of the camera phone. It could be just that we're using these devices, distracting ourselves from the experience. And because of that distraction, we don't remember the thing we're supposed to be paying attention to. Her research was actually suggesting our memory and our ability to remember things is being undermined by the camera phone, because you know what? Let's just take a picture. I don't have to remember it. I'll just take a photograph and I'll look at it later. So not bothering to look and absorb and to think about what you're looking at, simply take a picture and move on, is actually undermining our ability to memorize things and retain those memories. Why do I need to remember it? It's on the phone. It's got a photograph of it somewhere if I can find it. I thought that was a very interesting piece of research, and this idea that the camera of course it's true of any camera, sits between you, your eyes, and the world. And it's that interface. And is that interface actually taking something away? Something to consider. Going back to the statistics for how many pictures are taken worldwide and bringing it up to date, the last one I shared with you was 2017. This takes it up now to last year. 1.4 trillion photographs were predicted to be taken in last year. Typically, that's 8.3% compound annual growth. And again, what you're seeing is the percentage of those taken by smartphones is increasing at the cost of the digital camera. So in 2020, it's expected that 90.9% of all pictures taken worldwide will be done so on smartphones and camera phones, with only 7.3% on traditional digital cameras and a very small 1.8% on tablets. And that has been shifting in the favor of the smartphone year on year. Interesting statistics. So, what do you use yours for? What's been the most iconic image taken by a camera phone? We're rapidly approaching the Q&A session now, so I'd like to know, I'm sure that you're using your camera for things that I haven't mentioned, but also, what do you think has been the most striking image ever taken by a camera phone? How has it really had that impact on society? At the start, I said, of all of the features, all of the accessories that have been added into the smartphone as it evolved from the brick mobile of the mid-80s, of all of the features that have been added, it is perhaps the camera that has had by far the greatest impact on us, the users, and society in general. So I'd be very interested to hear your views on these two questions. I'd just like to say thank you to a few people. I'm very grateful for Stephen Temple. I'm also very envious of Stephen Temple because he has a Sharp J SH04 in his collection, and there are only 2,000 of those made, and he very graciously shared his photograph with me. Delighted to cooperate with Ben Wood and his mobile phone museum, and we've had a lot of interesting chats about camera phone technology. Mike Short has been very helpful as well, former president of the IET, of course. We've had a lot of discussions about use cases and the impact, the societal impact on the mobile phone. And my conspirator or co-author, if we want to put the other phrase on it, Andy Sutton's always immensely helpful. And we've had lots and lots of discussions about devices and also the important link between the mobile phone, the camera phone, and the network. Remember, we need the network for able to share these images. And the bigger the image in data terms, the bigger the network capacity has to be. So particular thanks to those four people who have helped me in pulling this slide pack together for you today. But with that, I'd just like to say thank you very much for your attention. I hope you found elements of that to be of interest to you. And I'll be delighted to hand back now to the local network who are going to manage the question and answer session. Thank you, everybody.
Many thanks, Nigel. That's a very comprehensive and very, very interesting presentation. Much appreciated. We're going to go straight into Q&A now, and I'll hand over to my colleague, George Williamson, who will look at the questions that have come in on the Q&A panel. There are 25 of them, I think, and we'll go through as many questions as we can in the time available. So over to George.
Nigel, thank you very much. First question is from David Stewart, who asks, what happened to Sharp and Nokia such that they have disappeared?
Well, that's a very good question, isn't it? If you look at the evolution of the smartphone, then basically, Nokia were the Nokia N95, very important phone. Nokia really at the top of its game, the real go-for mobile phone, and yet the iPhone and its re-envisaging the design. The iPhone wasn't technically advanced compared to the Nokia, not at all, but the design concept was what won over. And the likes of Sharp and Nokia really didn't respond to that in the same way for whatever reason. There's a huge debate about why that happened, of course. But the whole industry moved really eastwards from Europe, and you can see that continuing to this day. So there's a whole raft of reasons why companies lost the way a little bit. But yeah, there's the mobile phone evolution. What happened to Motorola? They started it. What happened to them? Companies been and gone. BlackBerry is another one.
Second question is from Salim Hakim, who asks about a Bayer filter. What is the meaning or etymology of this color filtering array? Does it relate to the company or the inventor's name?
Oh, I see. Actually, I don't know the origins of the name. Somebody else, I'm sure, does. But what you've got is the red, green, blue filters. And you'll notice that when you're eagle-eyed there were two greens, one red, one blue. Your eye is more receptive to green. So what you're actually doing is pulling out the different red, green, blue spectrum effectively into the image there. So the origin of the name, good question. I don't know the origin of the name, to be honest. Somebody can look it up and tell us.
Next question is from Kevin Field, who asks, why does my DSLR take passable passport photos, but my camera phone does not until recently, despite having higher pixel resolution?
Yeah, good question. Well, I don't know. It could be that as I said earlier, it's about capturing light. So often when you take a passport photograph, you're indoors and maybe if you'd actually improved the light levels around you, you might have found the smartphone quality improved. It isn't a straightforward answer really, because there are so many variables in that.
Okay. Salim Hakim asks quite a technical question. I'd like to have a quarter plate photo site, although it would be ridiculous since this large format negative size was 4 by 5 inches. I wonder if there's any mileage in photographic sensor equivalent of synthetic aperture using several distance small cameras.
Well, I think I've lost the plot somewhere along that road.
I think it's arrays of telescopes. It's a analogous thing.
Right.
But to achieve a quarter plate photo site.
Right, but that's going to take up most of the smartphone itself, isn't it, at that point?
Maybe that's one to go away with, Nigel.
Yeah, I think so. I was just thinking, how could you do that on the form factor of a smartphone?
Several smartphones.
Yes.
That's what the idea is, I think. Anyway, pixel binning. Why not just make bigger pixels rather than combining several tiny ones?
Well, yes, but you see, what they're doing is, if you make bigger pixels, you're going to reduce the resolution. And you're really going to use pixel binning when you're talking about low light conditions. So what you want is the flexibility in the phone so that if the light levels are good, you can use all the pixels individually and get the high resolution. Whereas if you're in a low light condition, then you can do pixel binning and you can get a better low light performance while sacrificing resolution. So it's just to have that flexibility, basically.
And someone else on the audience, or two people in the audience, Graham and Richard, have answered the Bayer question. And Bryce Bayer was an employee of Eastman Kodak.
Fantastic.
The invention arose from.
That
Okay.
I did not know, so thank you for that.
So Chet asks, what happened to Litro light field technology? The company threw in the towel, I believe, due to advances in mobile technology, but that was back in 2018. Was such a good idea to take a photo and click on different parts of the photo to focus to that depth point?
Right, no, I don't know. I don't know about that technology, I'm afraid. So I don't know what happened there. Not familiar with that one, I'm sorry.
Ian Mitchell asks, how does focus work on a camera phone?
Well, you've got the optical fixed focal length of the lens set up. So what you're then doing is effectively image processing by software to do autofocus of the image thereafter. But you've got a fixed, your lens on the camera is fixed focal length, of course. But there's another dimension to that. There is also the rangefinder capability on their phone as well. So what you find is that you've got if you look at the back of a phone, you'll often find that you've got not only the lenses of the camera, but you've also got a rangefinder capability as well, and that will determine the distance to the object. And
another answer has come up here relating to the passport photographs, and it says portrait photos for passports use a short telephoto lens to avoid distortion, whereas the camera phones use wide-angle lenses
yes.
to distort, especially the nose, which is closer to the lens.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's interesting. Good point. Yes, yes.
So I think that we're all learning here. So that's
we are. It's good stuff.
From anonymous attendee, to what extent do you think cameras and phones are being used to watch what the users are doing as well as listening?
Well, I think this is always a question, isn't it? Of is that camera actually observing you? I don't know. The problem you have these days is just walking anywhere. You don't know whether you're being photographed, do you? Because you don't know what people are doing with their camera phones. Are they really on a phone call, or are they actually filming you? We just don't know. We don't know that impact.
Okay. Are the lenses in the high megapixel cameras actually capable of resolving resolution at the pixel size on the sensor? That's from Richard.
I would hesitate to answer that question. I think we need to talk to an actual lens specialist about that, because that's quite a technical question about lenses. I don't know. I don't know. I think we'd have to take that one off to a real optical physics person.
On the subject of psychology of camera phones and or digital images generally, is it not a case of imagery is cheap and no one takes any time to create quality documents again? Yeah.
Well, yeah, this is it kind of picks up with that bit of research I mentioned at the end, doesn't it? About the convenience, and does the convenience make us a bit sloppy? The research I quoted was about sloppy memory, not remembering things so you don't need to, just take a quick picture. Well, it's a convenience thing. It's bound to have, we use it for that purpose. So, yeah, you want to record something, take a picture, don't need to write it down.
From John Alexander Head, is it possible to illustrate the comparative costs of these phones over time in real buying terms? For example, what would be the cost of a 2002 machine in present day prices?
Yes, there will be a way of doing that. I can't do it off the top of my head, but yeah, I'd say yes. We'd have to do that analysis. I can't give you a figure off the top of my head, but yeah, you can look at the retail price of the year it was sold and obviously extrapolate for inflation, and then you would compare it with pixels. Are you kind of going down the road if you want a price per pixel type figure? Is that where that's coming from?
No supplementaries are straightforward on this thing, I think.
No. But I wondered if that's where that train of thought was going. It's just an interesting bit of analysis we could do, I suppose.
Yeah. Peter Roll asks, does anyone know what happened to extended depth of field technology, which was all the rage in the late 2000s?
I don't know. Unless there's someone tuned in who says there are over 200 people on the call, maybe somebody, one of those 200 might know.
Do any phones include facial recognition?
Yes. Yes, of course. Yes, they do. A lot of them do. So much so that some of them unlock based on facial recognition. But here's a test, and mine doesn't, by the way. A little experiment I'd like to do when I get a facial recognition camera phone is whether it would recognize me from a photograph. Not a test I can do because mine doesn't have facial recognition. But yeah, a lot of smartphones have facial recognition, as an equivalent of a fingerprint login.
Okay, a question from Ken Blakesley. Lenses and sensors plus LIDAR and other tech will improve. But isn't the software and AI processing plus the constant flow of before and after picture taking applications are these making the smartphone surpass the SLR in function and results?
I still think if you're talking about the high end photography, and probably you're thinking about people who do these fantastic, say, wildlife type photographs, I think the quality of the real optics of a DSLR camera and the large image sensor, I don't really see a smartphone ever getting close to that. But let's face it, in a percentage terms of all the photography being done, that's a tiny, tiny percentage. So I think at the extreme edge of the real high end photography, I don't think the smartphone is going to go up there. But for the rest of us, it's already replaced the DSLR in a lot of cases.
Okay, I'm sure we could carry on, but I think we're running out of time. We said we would conclude by 2015, so I think we should pass back to Kevin Foster, our host.
Okay, many thanks. So yeah, it's a great presentation, Nigel. Very much appreciated. You certainly put an awful lot of effort into pulling the slides together, and there's great sort of technology history there, and I found it absolutely fascinating. So my thanks for everything you've done to pull the presentation together, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of the whole audience here.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the invitation to speak.
You're very welcome. Very much appreciate your time. So my thanks also to George for grouping and asking the questions on behalf of the audience. We've got a couple that I'd like to draw your attention to. The first one is entitled, "You are 467th in the queue. Your call is moderately important to us." And that's about cloud-based call centers on the 22nd of February. And there's another one called Agile. It's all about people, and that's on the 9th of March. So the link on the slide you can see, that gives you more details about these webinars and some others. So please take a look and register for those webinars. So finally, on behalf of IET Anglian Coastal Local Networks, thank you all for joining tonight. And thank you again, Nigel, for an excellent presentation. And my thanks to the team who put on tonight's webinar. Very much appreciated. So that concludes the webinar. You may disconnect now. Thank you.